the body hit the ground with a sickening thud. Blood pooled around her braided hair as the neon lights from the police cruisers painted her lifeless face red and blue. Someone screamed. A woman. Maybe her mother. Maybe just another bystander who couldn't believe what they'd just seen. Standing over the girl's body was Sheriff Tom Ellison, his service pistol hanging loose in his right hand, his chest heaving. A line of sweat rolled down his temple, though the October air had already turned sharp with early frost. The world around him buzzed with chaos, yelling deputies, flashing lights, phones recording, and the awful silence of a town stunned by betrayal. He hadn't said a word yet. Not to the officers swarming around him. Not to the press. Not even to his wife, who had arrived moments after the gunshot and now stood frozen by the tape, face crumbling as realization bloomed. The girl, 17, face still soft with youth, had tried to run. That much was clear. But why did the sheriff pull the trigger? That's when someone shouted from the crowd, "She was pregnant." Gasps. A deputy turned pale. Then came another voice, a woman this time, full of fire and fury. And it was his baby. Cameras turned. Mouths dropped. And suddenly, the sheriff wasn't just a man standing over a body. He was a man caught in something far more damning. In that instant, two truths collided. A girl was dead, and the town sheriff had secrets more explosive than any bullet. And no one, not the mother, not the deputies, not even the sheriff himself, was ready for what would come next. 2 months earlier, in the quiet town of Manning, Georgia, no one could have imagined how fast things would unravel. Danielle "Danny" Chambers was 17 and impatient for life, impatient for something more than school hallways, creaky porches, and grocery store stairs. Her mama called her too grown for her own good, but Danny just called it dreaming. She'd talk about New York City like it was heaven itself, bright lights, nobody knowing your business, freedom to be whoever the hell you wanted. Danny had plans. She wasn't going to be just another black girl working at the diner her whole life. She wanted to be a journalist. A real one. She wrote all the time. In notebooks, on napkins, on the back of receipts from the hardware store where she sometimes helped out. She had files and files of articles she'd never publish about her town, its quiet rot, and the people who smiled with knives behind their backs. Her mother, Janice, worked nights as a nurse and did her best to keep things steady. "Just graduate," she'd say. "Then you can do whatever you want." But Janice saw the fire in her daughter. The same fire that had once lived in her before life put it out. Danny didn't talk much about her father. He'd left when she was 5. Sometimes she'd ask, "Did he love me?" And Janice would answer, carefully, "He just didn't know how." That wound never healed right. Then there was Sheriff Tom Ellison, 52, clean-cut, war veteran, town hero. A white man in a mostly black county, but folks trusted him because he didn't see color, or so they said. He'd been sheriff for 16 years and had a reputation for getting things done. But Danny wasn't fooled. She'd written about him in her journal before, about how he looked too long when girls bent over. About how he touched her hand a second too long when she came to ask for an interview for her school project. About how he called her sharp as a tack but smiled like he was thinking something else. She'd written it down, but she hadn't told anyone. Not yet. One night in late August, Danny stayed late at school working on a story about missing persons in rural Georgia. It was past 8 p.m. when she walked home alone. That's when the cruiser pulled up beside her. "Miss Chambers," came the voice through the window. She turned and stiffened. "Evening, Sheriff." "You shouldn't be out this late," he said. "You know how it is around here." "I can take care of myself." "I bet you can. But why don't I give you a ride?" She hesitated. She knew better. Her mother's voice in her head said, "Don't get in no car with a man who smiles too quick." But Danny was tired. It was late, and the road ahead was dark. "Okay," she said finally, and got in. That ride was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, he became a shadow in her life. He'd stop by the school, just checking in. He offered to read her articles, said he admired her ambition. He made her feel seen, important. She'd never admit it, not even in her journals at first, but a part of her liked the attention. She craved being taken seriously. Then one afternoon, he gave her a burner phone. "For your investigations," he said. "Sometimes it's better not to use your regular line." She took it, confused, but curious. And that's when it started, the texts. Late at night. Weird compliments. "You looked smart today. You're going to make some man very lucky someday. You ever feel lonely?" She never replied at first. Then she did. Something in her wanted to understand him, to see if the rumors were true, to prove she could play the game and not get burned. But she didn't know how dark it would get. By mid-September, she'd stopped smiling around her friends. Her grades slipped. She started showing up late to school, distracted, quiet. Her best friend Maya tried to ask, but Danny shut her down every time. Then, one afternoon, Maya found Danny crying in the bathroom stall, clutching a test in her hand. "Positive." "You gotta tell your mom," Maya said, trembling. "I can't." "Danny, who?" And that's when Danny looked at her with eyes so full of shame and fear, Maya couldn't breathe. "I think it's his," Danny whispered. "The sheriff's." Maya stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. That night, Maya told her brother, James, a local college student who hated the sheriff for being dirty as hell. James told her not to say a word yet. "We need proof," he said. "We need to be smart." So they began digging. Meanwhile, Danny stopped sleeping. She'd walk around with bags under her eyes, barely eating. Her mother thought it was school stress. She had no idea her daughter was carrying a truth that could blow the whole town apart. Then came the threatening text. "You say anything, and I swear to God, I'll ruin you. I'll ruin your mama. You think anyone's gonna believe you over me?" Danny showed it to James. He said, "We go public, but not yet. Let's record him. Let's get everything." She agreed. But the sheriff was already watching. One night, Danny went missing. Janice called everyone. School, friends, the station. Sheriff Ellison himself showed up at the house, promising to do everything in his power. But Danny came home the next morning. Disheveled. Silent. Her phone smashed. She wouldn't say where she'd been. 2 days later, she scheduled a meeting with James at the diner to hand over something. She'd written it all down, every message, every detail, in a USB drive. But she never made it to the diner. Instead, she was seen running barefoot down Maple Street toward the old church. Deputies said she was out of her mind. But witnesses saw a black SUV behind her. Sheriff's plates. Moments later, a shot rang out. And now she lay on the pavement, 17 and gone, her secrets bleeding into the ground. Just before the ambulance arrived, one deputy picked up something by her hand, a blood-stained flash drive. And that's when everything began to unravel. The morgue was too quiet. Janice Chambers stood at the foot of the steel table where her daughter lay, skin too pale, lips too still. The sheet covered everything but Danny's face. Janice had seen death before too many times, in too many hospital rooms, but this was different. This was her baby. "I want to see her stomach," she said, voice firm but shaking. The coroner, a nervous man named Dr. Klein, hesitated. "Ms. Chambers, I'm not sure that's." "Do it," she snapped. "Now." He peeled the sheet back with trembling fingers. There was the smooth curve of her daughter's abdomen, untouched, cold. And then the truth, faint bruising, subtle swelling. "She was 17, Janice whispered. 17, and she was pregnant. And you all let that man kill her." Klein swallowed hard. "We have to wait for toxicology, but yes. Preliminary examination confirms she was in the early stages. 6 to 8 weeks, maybe more." Janice didn't cry. Not here. Not in front of this man. Instead, she clenched her fists and looked toward the small recorder she'd hidden in her coat pocket. She clicked it off. She had what she needed. News of Danny's death moved fast. Local outlets ran the headline as a tragic officer-involved incident, but social media had no filter. Hashtag Justice for Danny trended within hours. And the rumors, they caught fire. First, it was whispers. Then it was full-blown fury. Sheriff had a thing for young girls. They found something in her hand. She was pregnant, y'all. It was his. At first, Ellison stayed silent, hiding behind his office's press secretary and canned statements about an unstable situation, a dangerous chase, and regrettable loss of life. But when the story reached Atlanta news stations, everything changed. Outside Manning County Courthouse, protesters began to gather. Signs, bullhorns, chants. "Say her name," they yelled. "Danny Chambers." Inside, James paced the floor of Maya's living room. The flash drive, retrieved by a deputy and leaked anonymously, now sat on the coffee table between them. They'd copied it 3 times already. "Jesus Christ," Maya whispered, scrolling through the files. "It's all here. Messages, screenshots, voicemails, even pictures." James nodded. "This is how we burn him. But we need to be smart," Maya said. "If we post it, it'll blow up. But he still has power. He could hurt people. We need a lawyer. I already called someone," James said. "A civil rights attorney in Atlanta. Name's Ruby Locke. She's fire. Does she know what's on the drive?" "Not yet." Maya looked toward Danny's school photo on the shelf. A smiling girl in a yellow sweater, eyes full of light. "She trusted you with this," she said quietly. "We can't screw it up." Meanwhile, Ellison's world was beginning to crack. His wife, Susan, hadn't spoken to him since the night of the shooting. She'd taken their son and left the house that morning, slamming the door without a word. In the silence, the sheriff stared at the bourbon in his glass and the file folder on the table. Danielle Chambers, confidential. Inside were the printouts, her text messages, her school records, a copy of the test results she'd thrown in his trash the night she came to his office in tears. She hadn't said the words. She didn't have to. He knew. He'd panicked. She'd said she was going to tell someone. Said she wasn't going to be silent anymore. And he'd begged her. Promised her anything. "I'll take care of you," he'd said. "You don't have to ruin your life." But Danny didn't want promises. She wanted justice. And he couldn't afford justice. 2 days after Danny's funeral, a modest service with hundreds in attendance, media kept at a distance, the first recording leaked online. It was a voicemail. Ellison's voice. Tired, scared, desperate. "Danny, please. I know I messed up. You can't tell anyone. You don't understand what they'll do. I'll help you. I'll take care of it. Don't throw your life away." It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to set the town ablaze. The sheriff held a press conference the next morning, flanked by legal counsel and a shaky mayor. "I had a professional relationship with Ms. Chambers," he said, eyes dead. "She was troubled, and I tried to support her. I am devastated by her death. But I categorically deny any inappropriate behavior." The mayor nodded behind him, pale and sweating. But the crowd outside the courthouse didn't buy it. They threw bottles. The riot gear came out by nightfall. And still, the question echoed everywhere. Why did he kill her? Janice sat alone in Danny's room late that night, going through her daughter's notebooks. She found the story. Tucked between notes about other investigations, there it was, a draft labeled "The Good Men Are the Worst." It was raw, not finished. But it was all there. Danny had been documenting her entire relationship with Ellison, from the first encounter to the final threat. And in the margins, Danny had scrawled, "If anything happens to me, he did it. Don't let them bury me quiet." Janice didn't scream. She didn't cry. She picked up her phone and dialed Ruby Locke's number. "It's time," she said. "Let's make them listen." The next day, Ruby stood on the steps of the courthouse with Janice, James, and Maya beside her. Cameras pointed. Reporters leaned in. Today we are filing a wrongful death lawsuit against Sheriff Tom Ellison and the Manning County Sheriff's Office, Ruby announced. We have evidence of a months-long grooming relationship between Sheriff Ellison and Danielle Chambers, a minor. We have documentation. We have recordings. And we have witnesses. The crowd erupted. Reporters screamed questions. Protesters cheered. Ruby raised her voice above the noise. And let me be clear, Danny's death was not an accident. It was a cover-up. She was silenced to protect a predator. But we won't be silent. Inside the sheriff's office, Ellison watched the press conference unfold on the TV. His hands were shaking now. His career was over. His name was poison. And then the final blow. His deputy, the same one who had picked up the flash drive, walked into his office and set something down on the desk. His badge. I can't be part of this, the man said, voice steady. I saw what you did. I saw her run. She wasn't a threat. Ellison stared at him, pale. You'll regret this, the sheriff whispered. No, the deputy said, turning to leave. You will. As the door slammed shut behind him, the sheriff's phone lit up. A new message. Unknown number. You can't hide anymore. I know what really happened. Meet me tonight. Alone. And underneath it. Location. The old sawmill. Midnight. The sheriff stared at the screen. And, for the first time, he felt fear. The old sawmill sat at the edge of Manning's pine woods like a corpse no one had bothered to bury. Rusted metal groaned with every breath of wind. The main building, long since gutted, had become a place of whispered dares and teenage mischief, but tonight it was something else. Sheriff Tom Ellison stepped out of his truck at 11:57 p.m., the forest thick with shadows behind him. He wore no uniform, just jeans and a leather jacket. No badge. No gun. Just the phone in his pocket and the weight of his sins on his shoulders. He didn't know who sent the message, but he knew what it meant. Someone else knew. The sawmill door was ajar. Moonlight carved silver lines across the dirt floor. He stepped inside, boots crunching on broken glass. I came, he said aloud. Now what? A light flicked on. Not overhead, a flashlight handheld. It cut through the darkness and landed square on his face. From behind the beam came a voice. Low. Measured. Hello, Sheriff. Ellison squinted. Who the hell? The flashlight shifted, revealing James. He stepped forward, Maya just behind him. And in the beam of a second light, a third figure appeared. Janice. She was holding Danny's journal. This, Janice said, holding it high, is your confession. In her words. In her hand. You took her voice. Now we're giving it back. Ellison stiffened. You don't understand what you're playing with. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. She was 17. James roared, stepping forward. Don't tell me you didn't mean it. You groomed her. You scared her. And when she stood up for herself, you shot her. No, Ellison whispered, backing away. She ran. I told her to stop. I warned her. She was unarmed, Maya spat. She was pregnant. And you shot her in the back. Ellison's breath came fast. I panicked. She said she was going to the media, said she'd ruin me. You think anyone would believe me over a... He didn't finish the sentence. But he didn't need to. Janice stepped forward. You looked at my daughter like she was disposable, she said, voice shaking but steady. You stole her future because you couldn't control her anymore. Now it's your turn to feel powerless. James pulled out a recorder, identical to the one Danny had carried. This isn't for blackmail. It's not for leverage. This is your last chance to do one good thing. Ellison swallowed hard. You want me to confess? To the world, Maya said. To her, Janice added. There was silence. Long and awful. Then Ellison sank to the floor, knees hitting dirt. His hands trembled as he reached into his jacket and pulled out Danny's locket, The one she wore every day since she was 13. The one found in his office drawer by investigators. I loved her, he said, tears slipping down his cheeks. God help me, I did. James leaned in. Say it. Say what you did. Ellison nodded slowly, eyes on the recorder. I had a relationship with Danielle Chambers. I knew she was underage. I knew it was wrong. But I kept going. I manipulated her. Lied to her. I gave her a phone so she could contact me secretly. His voice cracked. She told me she was pregnant. Said she wanted to go public. I begged her not to. I said I'd fix it. But she ran. She was going to meet someone. Someone with the truth. I followed her. She didn't stop. His head dropped. I pulled the trigger. Janice choked back a sob. Maya clicked off the recorder. James looked at the man, broken, crumpled, sweating, and said, "It's over." But it wasn't. Not yet. The next morning, the tape was in Ruby Locke's hands. She played it at a press conference outside the Georgia state capitol. Reporters, activists, students, and half the town of Manning watched in breathless silence as the confession spilled out over loudspeakers. By sunset, Sheriff Tom Ellison was arrested by the GBI and charged with multiple felonies, statutory rape, abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and second-degree murder. But the war wasn't over. The town split in two. Some claimed it was all a setup, a smear campaign against a good man. Others lit candles for Danny, vowing to rename the town's library in her honor. And in the middle of it all, Janice stood tall. My daughter was more than a headline, she said in an interview with CNN. She was brave. She told the truth when no one else would. And she died for it. Weeks passed. Trials began. And then came the next bombshell. In a sealed box Danny had hidden in her closet, beneath her old dance trophies and school awards, police discovered one last flash drive. It contained not just files, but a full audio diary. A series of entries Danny had recorded in secret, meant for someday. And on one of the final tapes, she said, "If anything happens to me, don't just fight for me. Fight for every girl like me. Because there's more of us. Too many. I just hope I'm not the last one to scream." The recording played on every major network that night. It was Danny's voice, clear, calm, and full of hope. And somewhere in the crowd, a teenage girl heard it and whispered, "Me too." But the story wasn't done twisting. Because during pretrial discovery, defense attorneys revealed something that threw the courtroom into stunned silence. A journal, not Danny's, but someone else's. One of Ellison's deputies. Inside were entries, dated, detailed, about covering things up for years. Whispers of other girls. Other threats. And one name repeated over and over. Miller. A man no one expected. The town's assistant district attorney. Which meant Danny's case wasn't the only one buried. And as the courtroom erupted, James turned to Maya and whispered, "This goes deeper than we ever imagined." They called it the list. It wasn't supposed to exist. Hidden in the final pages of the deputy's journal, it named 5 girls, all minors, all from Manning County, with dates, initials, and notes like handled, moved, and in 2 chilling cases, disappeared. Ruby Locke stood before the judge and held it up like a grenade. "This list," she said, voice shaking with fury, "is proof that Danielle Chambers was not the first. And she might not have been the last." The courtroom erupted. James sat in the gallery, fists clenched, heart pounding. Next to him, Maya stared forward, frozen, her eyes on the Deputy Wade Miller, who now refused to meet anyone's gaze. He had been quiet through all the hearings, not a single word since his arrest. But now, under subpoena, he had no choice. In front of a packed courtroom and a growing line of TV cameras, Miller took the stand. He looked pale, sweaty, and broken. Ruby leaned in, voice even. "Mr. Miller, how long were you aware of Sheriff Ellison's inappropriate behavior toward underage girls?" He hesitated. "Since 2018. Gasps. And you never reported it? No. Why not? His mouth opened, closed. Then, because he wasn't the only one, the courtroom went dead silent. Ruby blinked. Excuse me. Miller swallowed hard. There were others. Judges, business owners, even the assistant DA, Kenneth Abrams. I was part of it. I mean, not like that. Not with the girls. But I helped keep things quiet. I moved files. Destroyed reports. Told parents they were misunderstood cases. I lied. A lot. He paused. Looked right at Janice in the front row. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Janice didn't flinch. Ruby narrowed her eyes. And the girls on that list? Miller nodded slowly. 2 of them left town after threats. One's in a psychiatric facility. Another one. I think she's dead. Danny found the file. That's what started it all. Ruby raised a brow. Are you saying she didn't just come forward about herself? No, Miller said. She was investigating all of us. Silence dropped like a hammer. Later that evening, Ruby, James, Maya, and Janice sat around a long oak table in the back of a community center turned war room. The air was thick with grief and rage, but also something new. Momentum. She was trying to expose a ring, Ruby said, spreading out copies of Danny's notes, recovered emails, and a map of Manning County marked with pins. Maya pointed to one, this house, the one near Route 6. She went there 2 days before she died. Janice stared at the address. I remember that place. Used to belong to some councilman. Burned down a few years ago. James leaned over. She must have found something there. It's in her journal. He kept photos there. Not just of me. He said it was his insurance. Ruby closed her eyes for a moment. That means there's still a stash. Evidence. And if we find it, James said, we can end this for good. Janice stood. Then what are we waiting for? They waited for nightfall. James and Maya drove out to the Route 6 house, or what was left of it. A caved-in shell of scorched timber and moss-covered foundation. Trees loomed over it like guards. They parked half a mile down the road and hiked the rest in silence. The floorboards creaked under their feet as they stepped through what used to be a living room. Rats scurried beneath the debris. The stench of old ash clung to the air. She said it was under the floor, Maya whispered, holding up Danny's journal. James scanned the cracked linoleum. Help me look for loose boards. They worked fast, adrenaline pushing past fear. Then a hollow thud. Maya froze. There. James dropped to his knees and pried the panel back. Inside was a metal box, sealed shut with rusted latches. He forced them open with a crowbar. The lid groaned. Inside were dozens of old Polaroids. Folders. Thumb drives. A bundle of letters tied with string. And one thing that made James curse aloud. A birth certificate. Of a girl named Ava King. Age, 16. Status, deceased. Except, she wasn't. Because Ava King was sitting in a psychiatric hospital 2 counties away, and she was the one who had started whispering Danny's name to nurses just last month. By morning, Ruby had everything packaged and delivered to the state's attorney general. With the new evidence, a special investigation was launched into a decades-long abuse ring hidden behind Southern hospitality and sheriff's badges. Arrests came fast. 2 county judges, 3 businessmen, the assistant DA, and 1 school principal. It was the largest corruption scandal in Georgia's history. Meanwhile, in Manning, the air was different. Quiet. Still. But changed. Danny's photo now hung in the high school lobby. Her name was etched on a plaque under the words, "Truth is power." Janice stood in front of it the day it was unveiled, holding back tears. She didn't just tell her story, she said. She told everyone else's too. The crowd clapped. Some wept, but in the back, a figure lingered quietly. A young woman with big eyes and a hoodie drawn tight. When the ceremony ended, she approached James. "You're Danny's friend, right?" she asked. "Yeah." The girl looked down. "I knew her. She helped me once. I never told anyone. But I have stuff too. Messages. Photos. From someone else. I want to give them to you. James didn't hesitate. He nodded. We'll protect you. We'll make sure they hear you. The girl looked up, eyes shining. I just want to be heard, she said. And James knew. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. But while the town rebuilt and truths rose from ashes, one man sat alone in a prison cell. Tom Ellison. Convicted. Shamed. Forgotten. He stared at a picture someone had smuggled in, a photo of Danny on the front page of Time magazine, smiling under the headline, "The Girl Who Spoke." He didn't smile back. Because every night he still heard her voice. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just disappointed. Tell the truth, she'd said in her last voicemail. Or someone else will. He closed his eyes. But there was no peace. 6 months later, the Georgia state capitol was packed wall to wall. There were reporters, lawmakers, students, grieving parents, survivors, and in the center of it all, standing at a wooden podium before the legislature, was Janice Chambers. She wore a simple navy dress, her daughter's locket around her neck. Her hands were steady on the microphone. I stand here not just as a mother, she began, her voice strong, but as the voice of a child who was silenced too soon. Danielle Chambers was 17 years old. Brilliant, brave, and betrayed. Silence fell across the chamber. She exposed more than just one man's crimes. She pulled back the curtain on a whole system built to protect predators and punish victims. And she paid for it with her life. Behind her, on a large screen, Danny's image appeared, a school photo, bright-eyed and grinning. We can't bring her back, Janice said. But we can make sure no other girl is ever told to keep quiet again. And with that, she introduced the bill. The Chambers Act, sweeping statewide legislation mandating independent investigations for all officer-involved deaths, immediate revocation of certification for law enforcement found guilty of sexual misconduct, and legal protections for minors reporting abuse from figures in authority. It passed with a unanimous vote. Tears fell across the gallery. But Janice didn't cry. Not today. Today, she stood tall. Later that evening, in the quiet of her home, Janice returned to Danny's room, left just as it was. The yellow walls. The vision board. The old, dented laptop that still sat on the desk. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened a new notebook. Letters to Danny, the first page read. She began to write. You did it, baby. You shook the whole world. You told the truth, and now it's rippling through every courtroom, every classroom, every broken system they tried to keep sealed shut. I wish you were here to see it. To see how many people you've saved. To see the girls who whisper your name with courage in their throats. I miss you every day, but I carry you with me. We all do. Outside, a breeze stirred the wind chimes. Somewhere in the distance, protesters were still marching. A candlelight vigil was planned for the town square. And a mural was going up across the library's outer wall, Danny's face painted in bold strokes, her eyes looking skyward. Meanwhile, James was back at the Route 6 site, now cordoned off and under forensic excavation. What started as a single case had become a statewide task force. They were finding records that stretched back 20 years, a web of silence stitched into the town's foundations. But that didn't stop James. Or Maya. Or the other volunteers who had joined their movement. Local youth, lawyers, social workers, survivors. They called themselves Danny's List, a watchdog coalition dedicated to exposing abuse in small towns just like Manning. Truth isn't just what you say, James told a reporter one day. It's what you keep saying, even when they try to bury it. Across the state, other stories began to emerge. Girls who'd been afraid to speak came forward. Women who'd been ignored finally found open ears. And in every town, from Augusta to Albany, one name kept echoing. Danny Chambers. Not as a victim, but as a symbol. A movement. A reckoning. 1 year to the day after Danny's death, a bronze statue was unveiled in the town square. Not of her whole body, just her hand, holding a pen high in the air. On the plaque beneath it were her own words, pulled from her audio diary. "They thought they could silence me, but I'm louder than I've ever been." The crowd stood in silence for a moment, then erupted in cheers. Maya held Janice's hand. James stood beside them, wiping his eyes. Nearby, a group of middle school girls held signs that read, "We are not disposable." A girl in a denim jacket stepped forward and left a single white rose at the base of the statue. She whispered, "Thank you," then walked away. Far away, behind concrete and steel, Tom Ellison sat in prison. The guards passed his cell without looking. In his hand was a crumpled newspaper, Danny's statue, front page. He stared at it for hours. And for the first time, he understood what he could never undo. His power was gone. Her voice wasn't. And neither was the truth. Epilogue. That night, as the town lights dimmed and porch lamps flickered on, the wind carried a sound through Manning, the quiet scratch of pens across paper, the hush of secrets being turned into stories. Young girls writing. Young girls fighting. Young girls refusing to be small. Danny had started it. But it was far from over. Because when truth catches fire, it spreads. And no bullet, no badge, no threat can ever kill what's already burned its way into the world.